In today's video, we're going to learn all about using program, aperture priority, shutter priority, and manual mode on your Fuji X series camera. Now make sure you stay till the end for my bonus tip. What's up everyone? Thanks for joining me as always. If you like what you see and hear, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to like, comment, and share this video while you're at it. While you're in the comments below, download my 5 portrait tips PDF and also check out my gear page at B&H Photo where you can see all of the equipment that I use in my studio and in my videos, and you can purchase your own. Before I explain how to use PASM modes on your Fujifilm camera, let me explain to you what these modes are. PASM is an acronym for Program, Aperture Priority, Shutter Priority, Manual, and it describes 4 shooting modes that almost every camera has. In program mode, the camera will choose both the aperture and the shutter speed for you, so you can consider this like a fully automatic mode. In aperture priority mode, you choose the aperture value and the camera will automatically pick the correct shutter speed to match for your exposure. In shutter priority mode, you pick the shutter speed and the camera automatically chooses the corresponding aperture value for the correct exposure. And as you probably figured by now, in manual mode, you choose both the shutter speed and the aperture for your scene. Now, keep in mind that there are other settings that will affect your exposure, mainly ISO, but we're going to put that aside for today's video. Also remember that in program mode, there's still a bunch of other settings that you can manually control, like the drive mode, the autofocus mode, and more. Most cameras and some Fuji cameras, like the XH2 series, have a physical PASM dial, so you choose these modes by simply rotating the dial. On an XT camera, however, there is no physical PASM dial, but rest assured that you can still use all of these modes, and I'm going to show you how. To use your Fuji XT camera in full program mode, rotate the shutter speed to the A, which stands for auto, and turn the aperture dial on your lens all the way past the minimum aperture to the A position. That's it. With both the shutter speed dial and aperture ring set to A, the camera is now in program mode and will choose the correct exposure and shutter speed for your scene. If you have a lens that does not have a physical aperture ring, just rotate the rear command dial all the way to the right past the minimum aperture value, and then the aperture value will turn white. This is the same thing as setting the physical dial to A, and once again your camera is now in fully auto mode and it will pick both the correct aperture and shutter speed. If you're brand new to photography, this is the mode you really want to start with because it'll let you concentrate on composing your images without having to know a lot of the technical detail. In aperture priority, the camera lets you prioritize or choose the correct aperture value for your scene, and it will automatically pick the correct shutter speed to go with it. Back in the day, we called this a partial program mode since you are letting the camera do some of the legwork for you. On an XT camera like the XT5, you engage aperture priority by leaving the shutter speed dial on the A setting and simply rotating the aperture ring to any value you choose. It's that simple. For instance, if I'm taking a portrait and I want to shoot wide open, which I always want to do, I can rotate my aperture ring to the widest setting, like f1.4 on my 35mm lens, and since the shutter speed dial is already set to A, it will pick the correct shutter speed to go along with the aperture I choose. Now, whatever aperture I choose, the camera will continue to change the shutter speed to match so I get the correct exposure. And this mode has traditionally been used for portrait photography since we usually want a wide aperture like 1.4 or 2.8 when we're taking a portrait and we want to blur out the background of the scene. To shoot in shutter priority mode, just do the opposite. Set the aperture ring back to the A position and then rotate the shutter speed dial away from the A to any of the number values that you choose. You are now prioritizing the shutter speed but letting the camera figure out the best aperture to go along with it so you get a properly exposed image. Now, many people will use this mode for action shots because you are able to pick a fast shutter speed like say 1/1000th of a second, and then the camera is going to just figure out the right aperture to go along with it so your pictures come out good. On an XT camera, this whole thing might seem confusing at first, but if you remember that shutter priority means you control the shutter and aperture priority means you control the aperture, all of the way we do this makes a lot more sense. Shooting in full manual mode means that you are now responsible for choosing both the correct aperture and the correct shutter speed for your scene. Although your camera will provide a meter reading or exposure simulation to help you figure out the right exposure, at the end of the day, the final exposure is completely up to you. And if you haven't guessed it yet, to do this on a Fuji XT camera in full manual mode, all you have to do is choose any aperture and shutter speed. In other words, both dials should not be set on the A setting, and now you're in manual mode. Think of it like this. You're like Luke Skywalker about to blow up the Death Star, and you've disengaged your targeting computer because you've got to trust your feelings now and use the Force. All right, now it's time for my bonus tip. Congrats to those of you who have made it this far, and the YouTube algorithm gods, thank you. Fuji makes understanding how your camera is operating so much easier by color coding the aperture and shutter speed on your screen and EVF. If the values are blue, you are in full control of the settings when you see blue numbers. When either the shutter speed or aperture value turns white, this means that the camera is now controlling these settings, and the numbers will change while the lighting changes automatically. In shutter priority mode, for example, the shutter speed will be blue, meaning you choose it, and the aperture value will be white, showing that the camera is going to pick that for you. Finally, you will notice that sometimes your aperture or your shutter speed will turn red. This is the camera warning you that one or both of these values are not going to give you a correct exposure. For instance, if you're in shutter priority and an f1.4 maximum aperture is red, this means that even that widest aperture isn't going to give you proper exposure, so you must slow down your shutter speed to compensate. Aperture and shutter speed and how they work together, this is a subject for another video, but let me sum up how the number values work this way. If it's blue, it's on you. If it's white, the camera's gonna be right. And if it's red, you're already dead. All right, everyone. Well, thanks as always for joining me today. If you are in the market for an XT5 or any other kind of Fuji product, please go ahead and use my links in the description below. Fuji's got some awesome deals happening right now, so check them out over at B&H Photo. Here's wishing you an awesome day. Go out and take some great pictures, my friends, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.